Well, it's time now for a check of what's making the international press, the front pages. For that, I'm joined by Elena Casas. Elena, what have you got first for us?
Let's start with an African story that's getting a lot of international headlines, and of course that's the trial of Charles Taylor, which should get a verdict tomorrow in The Hague. He's the first African head of state to be tried by an international court. Of course, former president of Liberia, who's being tried for crimes against humanity after he, of course, is considered to be responsible for the war in Sierra Leone. He's been tried for crimes including mass rape and enslaving people, child soldiers and murder and so on. Now, The Guardian has been to Sierra Leone and Liberia to find out how the case is going down amongst the people who were victims of that war, which lasted from 1991 to 2002. And they say that while people there say that while they obviously are glad to see him tried, that doesn't necessarily mean that it will change anything for them, those who suffered in that conflict. And some of the old tensions still remain. They also say, people in Sierra Leone say, yes, we want to see him go to jail. People in Liberia, when they went to visit there, some of them still defend him. There are polls there apparently saying that half of Liberians say they would vote for him if he stood for the presidency again, despite the fact that he, of course, they admit that he carried out terrible atrocities. The Independent, for its part, has actually been to interview his wife at their home in Monrovia, Liberia. She, of course, says all the stories made up about him are absolute rubbish and denies rumours he escaped from Liberia in a luxury car with $3 billion in cash, which is some of the things that The Hague has heard. The Independent says also that he still seems to have quite strong support there. And so it just goes to show that even though international criminal court trials, they say, are important to try and tell one version of history, it doesn't change what the resentments that people have against one another on the ground.
All right, and you've got another British paper there in front of you, and it's talking about the plot really thickening with this phone hacking scandal. It's really rocked the UK to the core, hasn't it?
It's not really phone hacking that's on the front pages today, of course. James Murdoch, son of Rupert and former boss of the British arm of News Corporation, having stood down, of course, a couple of weeks ago, he gave testimony to the LIBERIA'S inquiry, which is now investigating really much wider remit of things than just phone hacking, of course. All sorts of misdemeanours carried out by the British press. It's made the front pages of just about every newspaper. We can see The Guardian there. They've gone for Minister for Murdoch as a headline. That's because the testimony he gave yesterday was very embarrassing to the Culture Minister, Jeremy Hunt. So what did we actually learn? Now, Murdoch said that News Corporation had got information from Hunt, was being given information from Hunt in a series of emails that The Guardian's published today. You can see some of them there. They're emails from Murdoch's lobbyists who say that Hunt has been was operating for them, essentially, that he was not happy with an Ofcom report that said that the takeover of FISK by News Corporation would be contrary to competition law. He was trying to get that report changed, the emails say, to make it more convenient for News Corporation. And that, as the Daily Telegraph puts it this morning, would be absolutely illegal because Jeremy Hunt was the minister responsible for deciding if this broke competition law or not.
All right, Rupert Murdoch himself, he faces that inquiry later on today. What can we expect to hear from him?
Well, according to the Independent's front page, we can expect Murdoch's revenge later today. What we're seeing now, they say, is that he's never had a particularly good relationship with the current government. This is very embarrassing for David Cameron, everything that James Murdoch said yesterday, because, of course, one thing that the government has denied all along is that the Murdoch family did have any access to secret information, any privileged access to the government as a result of all the newspapers and media organisations that they own in Britain. That's what Murdoch's opponents have been saying all along, of course. He has far too much influence in British politics. The government denies it. Now it seems that Murdoch is unhappy. Then The Independent says that the British government is going after him in this way by forcing him to appear before the LIBERIA'S inquiry, and he's decided to fire back by revealing all sorts of things the government does not want to hear. Now, the one thing The Independent says that we won't be hearing is what is really going on inside Rupert Murdoch's head. They compare him to Don Corleone, saying one thing the Godfather said was to never let the opposition know what you're thinking. But he certainly seems to be sort of taking his revenge on the British government now over at his own newspaper, The Times. There's also an embarrassing headline for Culture Minister Jeremy Hunt saying he's rejected calls for his resignation. And of course, that probably means that resignation, as they say inside The Times, might well be coming fairly soon, because this is very embarrassing for the man who is meant to be the neutral power deciding whether or not the Murdochs own too much of the British media.
All right, Elena Casas, thank you very much indeed for that.